them here. Majo, thank you very much for joining us for Global Thoughts. I know you're very busy, and I just want to say thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the invite.
So just to give some context, how did I learn about Majo? I saw a webinar that she participated in, I think it was a couple months ago, with a Girl Rising, and I'll let you talk a little bit more about Girl Rising and all that, but I thought it was a fantastic presentation about some of the challenges that girls all over the world are facing, certainly regarding education. And I thought your piece in Guatemala was very, for me, it's a big interest, because one of the things that Abroadia wants to do is we want to provide study abroad opportunities for in South America and in Central America and Cuba. And I think Guatemala is certainly in that. It's a country I don't know too well, so I'm hoping you can help us a little bit with that. And so after that, I said, look, we need to have Majo as part of our Global Thoughts series, so she can share her expertise and her perspective, and just also educate people about Guatemala. You know, when I always I make a joke with many people, and it's really not far removed from a joke, really. If you say South America, the two countries that people think of immediately are Brazil and Argentina. They don't think about Bolivia, Ecuador, or Chile. And again, in Central America, the only country that people will think of two are really Mexico and Costa Rica, right? And if at that, you know, and I think that's the challenge we have, is we need to say, look, there's more to it than just two countries in Central America, and there's more than just Brazil and Argentina and South America. So with that in mind, that's why I had asked Majo to come here. So thank you again, Majo. So tell us a little bit more about your background. How did you become involved with Girl Rising?
Well, thank you everyone who's online, and thank you for the invite again, and for the interest in learning more about Guatemala and about the work we're doing with Girl Rising. So I started working in, you know, sexual reproductive health and education issues from you know, like an anthropology perspective, applied anthropology. And from, like, I started with water and sanitation. That was like one of my first interests. And then I started moving on to, you know, like child health related to water. And then I was like, maternal health. And then I ended up working with in education, not curricular, like in school education, but extracurricular and other ways of alternative education, as well as sexual reproductive health and rights with adolescents and with women. And so I've been consulting for a while in these issues, and then 4 people from different circles were like, this job opening in Girl Rising, you should apply. And there was a big media component in it that's not my strength or my, you know, but Girl Rising also was not focusing on that at the moment. They wanted more like technical support and perspective on how to work with adolescents locally, and that's how I got involved. So we're in our 3rd year of implementation now. We got oh, and I can also share I had some links ready. I had a presentation ready in case you wanted a presentation that we share sometimes. So we started in 2018, and if you want, I can share the presentation. It's not super long, and it has good photos.
That would be great. Yeah, I just gave you co-host ability, so you should be able to share. I'll stop mine, and you can share your presentation.
Right. Let's see. All right. You can see it now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, so we've been working since 2018, but a little bit of the context, and these 2 girls were part of our program in 2019. In terms of context regarding girls and adolescents, is that there's a lot of normalized violence, both by perpetrators and by survivors of violence, like in many parts of the world. There's things that happen that are not seen necessarily as violence, and that's part of the work, right, of raising awareness about this and naming, starting by building safe spaces where girls and adolescents can name the violence they have seen or have experienced. There's a lot of girls that are forced to leave school for many reasons, between hitting puberty and having menstruation and being more dangerous for girls to be out, to also families having economic hardship and having to choose over who is going to stay in school. And there's a lot of bias towards boys staying in school in relation to girls. There's also a lack of infrastructure. There's a lot of communities that don't have secondary schools nearby, and there's no public secondary schools. So if there's a secondary school nearby, it's paid, and that means more limitations. And then the schools that are, well, right now many of the schools were affected during the last hurricanes. But if the schools are there, there's not a lot of good spaces for girls, for safety. Like there's no running water, so managing menstruation, for example, can be hard. There's a lot of forced marriage and pregnancies, and the rates went up this year, as it has been around the world with COVID and people being indoors. And a lot of forced migration, either due to economic hardship or seeking not only migration mostly to the US, to the north, but also migration from the rural communities to the urban spaces in looking for jobs, looking for better economic opportunities. Or there's even places that people are displaced because of climate change. Just now with the hurricanes, there was a lot of communities that are underwater still, most of the houses and the schools, and people see the need of just moving to a safer space. And then gender discrimination, and then you combine it with racism and ageism. Here it's important to name that because the majority of the population in Guatemala is indigenous. And so if you're indigenous, you're poor, you're rural, and you're also an adolescent, you're practically invisible. For just as many populations are invisible around the world and have been either criminalized or set apart, as not important. So we started in 2019 actually, working in Solola, which is marked there in the map. And one of the big statistics here is that the girls that are in 6th grade, so not all girls enter 6th grade, but there's a big cut between 6th grade and 7th grade. And of the girls that are in 6th grade, only 1 out of 3 goes on to 7th grade, at least in Solola. And in many other departments, the rates are either higher or lower, but it's in that range. So this means the 2 girls that are outside of school have a higher risk of forced pregnancies and adolescent marriage because they're not in school and they don't have necessarily access. I'm not saying that schools are perfect and that the public system doesn't need strengthening and a better budget, which is something about what we're recently protesting about. I don't know if you saw the news. But just being in school also gives you other tools, even if the infrastructure is not the greatest, or you don't have access to school supplies, or you have to walk hours to the schools. It's a space for sociability, for learning other tools, and then in some spaces having teachers that are great models and examples. And I wanted to show you, this was another girl from one of our programs in 2019. And that's one of the schools in her community. Well, it's the school in her community. And it was just weird because we went and it was all closed, like shut down that day. We were there for a video workshop with girls from our programs, and girls are strong. They're amazing. They have a lot of ideas, a lot of energy, a lot of dreams also. But sometimes they're restricted and by their families or by society, by church, by many things. Currently, we're working in 5 regions. So it's Sololá, the one that I showed in red with the lake Atitlan, Guatemala City. We have a program right outside in the like peri-urban, vulnerable part of the city. Well, there's many vulnerable places in the city, but this is Jalapa, and we're working in a community there with a community-based program. So both in Sololá and in Jalapa, and Totonicapan, which is here at the north, we're working with community-based organizations with mentors that are 20, like early 20s, who are also indigenous. And so they have a different lived experience, right? In their bodies, in their experience, they know how it is to grow up in this country. And I always tell them and reinforce that they have a lot of expertise because they know the local language, and they have that personal experience of what it is to be a young woman or a girl in these territories. And then we're working in Quetzaltenango, in Sololá, and in Guatemala City. We're working with 3 different schools that are private, but they are socially oriented, and so they make it available. They make good education available to the local population. One of them in Sololá works only with indigenous girls, and the other 2 are mixed. But their political stance is that indigenous girls have not had the chance to have a proper education, and there's many blockages for them to access education. So it's it's great that they're investing in a population that has not had access to education for decades, centuries. These are the photos from, I don't know if you can, these are our materials, and the first year of the pilot year was translation and contextualization of our materials. So that included the guide for mentors, finishing dubbing some of the films. And I don't know if you've seen any of our films, but they're on YouTube, and they're also purchasable online if you want to support our work that way. And this was a photo of one of the mentors with the girls at our video workshop. And so it was a process of building relationships with partners and allies, training mentors and teachers that we were going to work with, sharing as much as I could with them about monitoring and evaluation. And we did about 7 months of programming with 2 partners and 7 mentors to reach around the girls that were in our programs, like more constantly, were 230 girls. And usually the program is more for like 5th grade up, like 5th grade, 6th grade, and middle school. But in some of the communities, the 6 and 8-year-olds wanted to come to the program. And I was like, well, let's do it. They're there. And we can't close the doors to younglings just because we just have to adapt the materials. And the mentors are great at that. Not only translating it, but adapting it to the knowledge. And for example, the school that we're working with, we work with 9th graders. But if we worked with 9th graders at the community level, it would be very different. Their schooling levels are quite different, just because this school has invested a lot in tutoring and materials and having space to, for a computer lab, for a chemistry lab. And the girls at the community level do not have that. So it's a different rhythms also of development and of learning. And then this is our year 2 that we're closing up of implementation. With the COVID pandemic, we had to do several adaptations. With some of the partners that had the chance, we did online sessions via Google Classroom. And then for girls that don't have access to education or to the Ministry of Education, for example, this year started doing classes online and via TV. And a lot of people don't have that. So we did a radio show that you can follow, and I'll share our page later. So that's the radio show Cambiando Mi Mundo, which means changing my world. And we're starting and strengthening little by little a network of partners and allies, organizations that work with adolescent girls or girls, to build a platform from which we can learn from each other and be in relation with each other, but most importantly, be a space for adolescent girls to be able to do advocacy or incidents. In many spaces, there's, the technical table of the girl, and there are no girls present, and very few women, I would say, as well. So let's make a space where girls can be part of the political process and what that means at the local level. And we incremented to 5 partners, working with mentors and teachers, and now we work in some schools that are mixed, so we have girls and boys in our programs. And this is from our first year. That was the the workshop, the video workshop we had, and these two are sisters. And from our monitoring and evaluation, what we do is try to measure before and after our program some perceptions around gender, around marriage, around gender norms. And these are some of the things that changed over time. We asked them things like, I can convince other people about what I believe. And they can say on a scale how comfortable they feel with that. And so through the program, I don't even want to say like, oh, we're reducing child marriage, but we are incrementing confidence in girls to talk about their dreams, about their hopes, in education as well, and to care about other things, but also learn that they are not alone, that there are many girls around the world that are going through similar stuff, but also fighting back. And what lies ahead is, it's always keep learning and sharing, and that means learning from other people and what they're doing locally, and also being able to adapt our materials to the needs that are locally important. So some of the things that we did also in year 2 were dubbing our films into 2 Mayan languages. So now we have them in Spanish and in 2 Mayan languages. And it's in terms of representation, imagine listening to your mother language on a screen. Because when we were able to, and when we do it again, we do community screenings again as well. So girls and family members and community members see the film, and it's in their maternal language, and that has power. And continue to engage parents, boys, and explore ways to engage authorities and other sectors. It's really hard in terms of working with the Ministry of Education. There's stuff that you can do locally, but then there's things at the ministry level. Now I have more people on my team. I have an assistant, so maybe we'll make it happen. And with this network of organizations, it's going to be more possible to do other stuff. These are 2 of the mentors and some of the girls that were in the program in 2019, and they're on the guide for mentors. They're on the cover. We asked for their permission, of course. And this is where you can find more information. I'll copy the Facebook one if you want, because I put in the chat the Girl Rising webpage, and it's in English. This one is in Spanish because it's mostly for the girls here, and that's our Facebook page. And we have a booklet that we designed this year for that radio show, so that girls were able to have a tool to work from home. Like I said, many of these girls, at least at the community level, and even in urban spaces, the ones that did it via Google Classroom, for example, speaking with the teachers this year, maybe 75% of their students had access to a phone or a tablet and to internet. So that means we still need to reach that 25%, right? Like there's still stuff to do. So the radio show is an effort to do that, and we're thinking of how to replay the sessions and use the booklet and go to spaces where usually we don't think of kids, but that their kids are present, like markets, for example. Farmers markets have a lot of kids and adolescents working, and it's important to reach them with some kind of messaging, right? Like I said, we're not trying to change, like in 2 years, have the the adolescent pregnancies index go down. It's working with other people that allow us to learn from each other and see that change that will take a lot of time. Because when we talk about questioning gender roles, questioning gender norms, it's a long process, right? But reaching kids at an early age is I mean, I love training. I do the trainings with teachers and with mentors, and I missed it this year, honestly, because virtual trainings are terrible. But like as an anthropologist, I like people mostly. There are some humans that I don't like, but mostly I like humans. But it's hard. It's hard to teach adults and to question their beliefs and what they think is the only truth. So with kids, it's just this like huge potential, and you're all in education, so you know the power that it can have. Young people are amazing, kids are amazing, and so that's where I'm putting energy and time in seeing how we can reach kids with these messages around gender. So enough with the presentation, now let's talk.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Majo. That was fantastic. I mean, I think that was it just gives us a nice view of the work that you're doing, and I think just the fact that you're reaching out and helping create and sustain positive relationships with these girls. I think that's the key to anything, is just having a good relationship to begin with, and certainly in education is the next step. I really applaud the work that you're doing. One of the things I wanted to ask you before I turn this over for Kathy, Joan, and Melissa to ask any questions, we'll do a regular conversation. Abroadia wanted to make a donation. Do you have or is there any way we can make a donation to Girl Rising, or how could we do that?
Yeah, there's more information on our webpage.
Okay. Okay.
And if you want to donate specifically for Guatemala, you can put that in the webpage.
Okay.
I mean, the other programs from Girl Rising are also amazing. They're
No, of
doing
course,
great things in different countries.
Mhm.
But yeah, the information is on the Girl Rising webpage on how can I contribute. I can look it up if you want right now.
No, I'll look it up. Well, I think Joan and Kathy, Melissa
Mhm.
may have some questions. If anyone has any questions.
I know there's like a tax deductible
Oh,
things
of
in the
course.
US, I don't know. And then there's a form that you can fill out to say what you want to donate directly to. Because we've had from a teacher as well, a specific donation, like he was like, it's not a lot, but like we want, with my family, we want to donate $50 every month. And I'm like, that's great. Thank you. It is a lot. You're donating.
Good. No, that's great. No, it's important. So now I'll turn it over to the conversational part of the presentation. Joan or Kathy, Melissa, do you have any thoughts or any questions for Majo?
Majo, I just think the work you're doing is great, and thank you for getting it started while these students are younger, and can impact their brothers and sisters perhaps and their other family members before it spreads even farther, hopefully through their communities. I think, is there any effort being made by groups, government or non-governmental, to build secondary schooling throughout Guatemala, particularly in some of the more rural areas?
So I'm a little bit angry these days because of Congress and their stupid approval of of a budget that does not reflect the needs of the country. It's not this Congress only, like it's
Yeah.
historically there's a lot of inequality. Guatemala is one of the most unequal countries in Latin America. And you know, there's people that never touch the ground. Like they fly from their penthouse to their office on a helicopter. And then there's kids dying from diarrhea, from something that is completely preventable. So it's an unequal country, so it's, you know, challenging, and there's not enough budget for schools. There's not enough presence of the state either in many places. There's a lot of good people in the Ministry of Education. I mean, including the teachers, including the technical people that are doing, you know, statistical analysis and all of that. But the politics inside the ministries, like in any other ministry and in any other country, it's hard. I mean, we need more budget for schools. I mean, I would, like, if I had like a like magic something, I would say the budget should go for education and health. Those are my two passions also, but so I might be a little bit biased, but I do think that healthy people can do a lot of things, and educated people can,
Do even more.
their like universe opens, right? In terms of there's other people and other sectors from the NGO sector, from private sector, that I usually like look at suspiciously. Sometimes I'm like, meh, I don't know if you're doing enough, but sure. Those are my political views, by the way. It's like I'm very so there are some efforts. There's just not enough, you know. Like right now with the hurricane, I think it was maybe there's not even good data. Like there was a range of how many schools might have been, and the government is not doing anything to find out, but there's around 480 schools that
Gone.
either with like severe damage, and they cannot, you know, also right now with COVID, it's weird because it's like, how do we do a hybrid model where kids can attend school, and when it gets bad again, they can go back, you know? I know there's people like, ¿cómo se llama esto? Like Engineers Without Borders that work here. There's people that, you know, like different NGO sector doing stuff, and with donations also from foundations and other things. But we definitely need, like, not the schools here don't even have good desks or lighting or and so the private schools have taken over
Education.
a little bit of the excellency, not only in terms of education, but also in terms of what they offer, like infrastructurally. But it's private education, so it's not affordable to a lot of people. So I don't believe in privatization of services. It just makes it more exclusive, and it makes it less accessible to people. So we have to keep on fighting and making sure Congress does put the money where the need is.
Thank you.
I do. Oh, I'm sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Hi everyone. I wanted to ask Majo something I've seen. I work in Morocco, and so I guess my question for you is, what have you learned, I think, about partnership or working with maybe international organizations or like with outside organizations? Maybe what are some best practices for how they can work? I mean, when outside organizations are working with Guatemalans, because I think what I've seen is there may be times when some of the goals of outside organizations are really like they're set toward the ideals from that context, but maybe they don't work within the context in Guatemala. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll talk from like Girls Rising's perspective, for example. It's an organization that was, is based in the US, was started by journalists, mostly white as well, because that has a lot to do with your perspective of the world and how you have lived and moved around the world. And I do appreciate that they want to have local, like hire local people when we're working in different countries. So the managers at the country level most of them are women, and most of them all of them are from the country, like from in country. And I've been very thankful because they're very respectful, and they receive well my political inputs, even if I'm a little bit more radical than other people. And like there's things that we've learned from our programs in India or in Argentina or in Thailand, but that don't apply here, or things that do apply, and it's great to have that, both of that. Or there's a social responsibility funding from certain companies, and I'm like, I won't receive money from coffee, sorry, like that's historically, uh, they deprive the land, there's kids working at the coffee plantations, like that wouldn't be, so they're very open to the inputs. But I think the most important part is working with local partners, because even if I'm Guatemalan, I'm very privileged. I'm highly educated. I'm urban. I'm a mestiza, so I'm not indigenous. Um, and I believe in the expertise that local people have at the community level. And we wouldn't be able to be doing the work that we're doing if the mentors didn't tell me things like, this program is like, we need to simplify it, or remember we need to translate, and I'm like, sure, yes, like there's
Mhm.
I think in the development world we need to change certain things, and definitely work with local people, because eventually I wouldn't want me to be in this position of power and decision making. It should be one of the mentors. It should be right, and the process is having them learn English if that's what it takes, but also how about the development world opening up to other languages that thousands and thousands and thousands of people speak. So I think it's up to us in a little way, to like the people that are kind of like that bridge, to say like we need to trust local people about what they need, what they can take ownership of, and what they can continue doing even if the organization leaves.
Thank you.
I have two questions. They're kind of diverse, so I'll go with the very first question that I thought of when you were talking about the involvement of parents. How involved do the parents, how involved are the parents?
Mm-hmm. So Spanish is a very sexist language. So there's no word for parents. You could call it padres, which is very masculine. So I always in my trainings and with teachers and mentors, I say like mothers and fathers, because also it's important to make them visible, but also it's important to say that mostly mothers are the ones that are engaged, to be honest. Like moms are, I'm not saying there's no fathers present, but mostly it's women, and it's not surprising, right? So it's a lot of moms are engaged, like with the radio show, for example. In some communities, there's days when there's no good signal for radio even. And the moms were calling the mentors like, hey, is the show transmitting? Or like, when are you bringing the other part of the booklet? So moms are pretty much engaged. And last year, when we had community screenings, and we had like a closing ceremony of the program, and we gave out diplomas and all of that, mostly the moms showed up. And it makes sense also because it's, even if they're adults and they already have certain belief systems and all, they can understand and relate more quickly to what it is to be a woman. how it is for girls to grow up where we have grown up. And so, yeah, they pretty much connect. And there's parents that are not engaged, which is okay as well. They'll get to it eventually. There's different rhythms. But I really admire the moms for being there, because here a lot of the moms are monolingual, so they don't speak Spanish, or they don't know how to write, or they didn't finish elementary school, but they're there, you know, like making sure their kids do their homework, and, you know, like remember the radio show, or remember to do the booklet, even though they can't necessarily help out with the math or the science homework. They're involved and making sure their kids go beyond what they were able to. So I mean, this year our idea was to do community screenings like more often, because then the films give us the like pedagogical opportunity to talk with young people and with adults. And from the adults' perspective, it's like, how do you want to be an ally to the girls in your life? I mean, in your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your friends, girls, like, how do you want to be an ally to girls in the world? And hopefully next year we can do it like more often, because then we show the film and we have conversations about, you know, what it is to how can we support girls. And I think it's important to mention also that for me at least, I give parents the benefit of the doubt to begin with. They're acting from good intentions, mostly from ignorance sometimes, and in a country where education has not been a right that has been guaranteed. We need to educate adults as well, and parents are important too. So keeping them engaged in ways that they can, you know, like our curriculum has a section on how to have conversation with parents, for example. If there's like a complicated conversation around, like, why are you teaching my girl about, you know, like puberty, and you're pushing her to have sex, or, you know, and it's like, no, here are the materials, like, this is what we're teaching, this is what, look, and blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, yeah, I don't have the tools to talk about that with my kid. And it's okay, you know, like, so it's inviting also the moms to see how we can, because they can be very positive examples, and they can tell other moms, you know, like, I don't have access to the moms, but if we have access to, like, the mentors have access to certain families and have good conversations, then the moms can be the ambassadors, the most effective ambassadors of programs that have to do with education. What's your other question, Kathy?
Oh, my other, you sort of started on it. I was just wondering what, like, we talk about lesson plans and things, and I was just wondering, you mentioned about some of the things that you would work with the girls on, or how to have these challenging conversations and dialogue. What would some of the other programs be that you would work, that the mentors would work with the girls?
Like the themes or content that we cover?
Yeah, just an idea of.
So in the process of adaptation and translation of the curriculum back in 2018, I also included a table of how it connects to the competencies being, you know, promoted at the public education system and at the private too, because they have to also cover that. So to tell teachers and parents and whoever asks, what we're doing doesn't conflict with the you know, national curriculum of education. It can be like an extra tool that accompanies, that strengthens, or that amplifies some of the issues. For example, one of them is like global citizenship. You know, our 6 stories are from different parts of the world, the ones that we use here. And so they're learning about other geographies, other territories, other struggles. And then in the radio show, especially, because the guide is designed for teachers to use it, or for mentors to guide the content, right? the radio show is for girls to do it at home and boys. So we had to do it like more in like more fun with more illustrations, more stuff. But we had components around emotional health and mental health in quarantine or in different crises, the economic crisis that COVID like just sparked,
Right.
or made more acute. And then we cover everything that we cover, we related to how girls can be specifically affected by something like poverty, undernourishment. We talk about sex work, we talk about forced marriage and adolescent pregnancy, HIV and sexual reproductive health, people living, you know, in homelessness or living in other vulnerable conditions. And so, you know, saying like, okay, this country especially is very badly hit by undernourishment in several regions and for generations. Like undernourished moms are having undernourished babies, and that's like the cycle. But it's different for girls. It's a little bit worse, right? Like we talk about that specificity because in many, I won't say in all the houses, but in some households, men are the ones to eat first.
Right.
Or have the biggest piece of chicken if there's chicken available. And then women and girls eat second or last, because
Not at all.
well, they don't need it. They are not developing like muscles or you know, I don't know what the so it's talking about those specificities, right? Like there's many problems around the world that are not unique to Guatemala. There's a video, there's one of the films is on Haiti, and it's one of the ones that kids like a lot, and moms as well, with the Haiti earthquake and how girls are a specific, you know, like I always tell them when I do the trainings, for example, with teachers, and they're like, no, we promote equality in the classroom. Yeah, I'm like, okay, who washes the dishes after an activity, or who is preparing the food? Is it boys and girls, or is it only girls? Or when boys need to clean the classrooms, do they do it, you know, normally, or do they like say no every single time and fight about it? And what are the arguments that you give them? So yeah, we try to touch on many like global issues, try to connect them locally and even to personal stories, with the specificity of how does it affect girls and adolescents.
Majo, how do you feel about, as we're many of us in international education, how do you feel as an anthropologist about the impact that students coming from abroad who maybe want to observe or take part in some of your activities through Girl Rising, how do you see that as impacting the Guatemalans that are involved?
It depends. I've seen a range of programs,
Mhm.
and it's a little bit of poverty tourism sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's like babysitting here, everyone, you know. And then I've seen programs that really want to learn from people and keep a relationship with people also locally. I think there's a lot of opportunity and potential in exchange, in cultural exchange. I think for students to come, you know, or for adults too, it's reading up on the country that you're visiting, or like specific area or region that you're going to be at, and try to see things from people's shoes, as hard as that is, because you might be very different in terms of skin color, language, opportunities, all of that. But trying to see things from that perspective and not from an ethnocentric perspective of saying like, ooh, these like underdeveloped or savage, you know, like, so it's I'm just gonna write my email. I think it's a process, but I think there's definitely, I think young people everywhere have the potential of learning things that will change their lives. And because of that, they're going to change other lives in whatever they do. And so exposing young people to, I would say, like, even this applies for people here in the city who want to travel to the communities. It's like learning how the war affected and still affects people, how the inequality is not just like, ooh, it happens, like there are people behind these power structures. And we need to question our own privileges, for example, or where our power comes from, and how can we distribute it more evenly. So I think young people have that capacity and that potential. So if they come with an open mind and um, thinking of ways in which they can connect it, like beyond saying like, "Ooh, I'm really privileged because I live in the U.S. and I was born here and I have a school," but going beyond that is important for whatever age. But I think young people are more flexible, so they're more open to that.
Yeah.
I have a question for you all. What are you doing? What is each of you doing? And how long have you been working on education? I always ask people that have been, in education for, I don't know, 20 plus years. I'm like, how do you still believe? Yeah, like what keeps you motivated to keep on doing this kind of work, and the kind, I don't know what type of work you're doing.
I'll go. I'll start.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
We're all kind of hanging back, waiting for each other to go. I am the Assistant Director for Overseas Studies and Exchanges at a small college in upstate New York, and it's in Rochester, New York. We have about a total of about 3,000 students. That would be a combination of undergraduate and graduate students. And I have been in this position at Nazareth for 12 years. I did not, this was like a career change for me. When I moved up to upstate New York, I was originally in the field of medical research. And I moved up here and just decided that there are other things. There are other things to do. I was always involved in education. I taught, I've taught anywhere from kindergarten, that was an experience, up through high school, through the medical students, and also college up here in Rochester. And so I'm still involved in education. Right now, all of our programs are on hold. They were suspended. We brought our students home last spring. I think we're tentatively on hold right now through the end of June, but I'm anticipating that we'll probably be on hold through the summer. But I hope if we do have vaccines available, that things might be able to open up a little bit in the fall of 2021. I think what keeps me going, and which has been a real challenge, I'm not sure if Tom and Joan would also, and Melissa would agree on this, it's particularly challenging when you're missing that student connection of, the COVID was hard enough, but then to not have that real student connection, it's more than, people kept saying to me, oh, you can't send anybody abroad. That's including faculty, staff, and students. I can't explain to them it's a much different, it's much more, it's much deeper than that. You've lost that connection with students, and so it's the students that keep me going. It's the staff and faculty that I work with on short-term programs, because I coordinate some short-term programs also in addition to the semester-long programs. So I have short-term program to London for our theater students, to Ethiopia, which I also led. You know, it's really tough not going to Ethiopia, thinking about going to Ethiopia in December, January, for more reasons than just we're not going to be able to travel. It's because we have that connection there. So.
Mhm. I was in international ed through a study abroad provider for the past 13 plus years. We too brought all our students home early March, and after that we had some major layoffs. So I'm currently unemployed, but I would have to say that having studied abroad myself, having an experience actually in Guatemala, Lake Itzabal, and spending time there with a small community. These are things that have shaped my life even before I got involved with study abroad as a profession. And they continue to do so because I think, for me, most importantly, to your point, Majo, the politics that we have seen here in the US for the last few years have instilled in me a passion for US students having the opportunity to be well educated and educated on a global scale, so that our future leaders, those people who will be making decisions for us in the future, will have that element of humanity and global understanding. So.
And so for me, I started a student study abroad program in Morocco, and I have, I guess kind of where my question came from is, you know, I guess your answer really resonated a lot for me, because what I've found, similar to how you described yourself as trying to kind of be a bridge, you know, I've found that I think a lot of the value in what I organize in bringing students to Morocco is giving them opportunities to learn from locals. And on the other side of that, you know, for our Moroccan program leaders who get to be then put into the position of being the local expert, and being in a position where maybe in their society, you know, they're not at the top of the social hierarchy, and they wouldn't necessarily be the one that people would look to in a meeting. And so for them to then be in a position where they're getting to be reporting to powerful Americans about their culture, you know, there's a lot that I've seen them gain from that experience. And I've seen host communities who in rural areas are, you know, they're looking toward the bigger cities, and they're not seeing their home as being necessarily a special place because everybody wants to get to the city. And then when a group of students comes in and is amazed by how beautiful it is and how calm it is, and they benefit from the location, it's interesting to when the local students and local youth get to see their home through somebody else's eyes. And so, yeah, something that I try to explore is how do we challenge the ways that we engage? How do we change who we view as an expert? And so to try to decolonize a bit and get this American, I guess, expectations out of the way and break that down a bit. And so what's keeping me going? I mean, I'm starting to daydream about, and I'll probably try to plan for programs as soon as late summer, kind of with my fingers crossed. And I think part of that is because I expect Morocco, I think US students if they can get a vaccine, I think Morocco will do a good job of getting a vaccine to its citizens. But I'm wondering, what other countries are going to look like. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big concern that is coming up for all of us. But yeah, so I guess I am trying to do what I can to keep some of those kinds of relationships going. So I'm doing a series of discussions and workshops for Moroccan program leaders who have worked with me in the past, and am starting to talk to schools about doing virtual exchange programs. But there is a certain amount of just like dreaming toward what might be possible in the future that keeps me optimistic.
I guess I'll put in my 2 cents worth as well. I've been in the field for about 20 years. And I think what keeps me going right now, because we have no students, unfortunately, going abroad, are these type of conversations that we're having with you, Majo. I think this one, the one that we had with Shabana the other day about the school in Afghanistan, touched me very deeply, actually. I didn't get emotional, but it really did touch me. And I think these connections are still possible, even if we can't send students abroad physically. But also, it's really made me think. I've always believed in peace and social justice, but now really focusing on how we're doing study abroad, there are a lot of issues. I'll tell you a couple of things. One, I left abroad. I was a resident director in Cuba with another provider, and I left because they wanted to reduce the payments to the host families. They basically said, well, Tom, you can find another family. If the family doesn't take this cut that we're giving, find another one that will. And I didn't like that at all, because you're taking advantage of the difficult economic situation of the host family for your own benefit. And I've never liked that. What my policy, our policy here in Abroadia is, even with a pandemic, we would, and if we made the payment, we would never ask the family to give that payment back. That is, it's immutable. That the host families will always have the payment. We would get the refund from some other administrative aspect or part of the program. I think study abroad in general has to think more along those lines. And I think what Melissa was saying, that's spot on. That's exactly what this the field has to do. Right now, I know a couple of universities in Texas and one in Boston have students abroad. Now, the problem I have with that is, yes, you're allowing students to continue their wish to study abroad, but you're imposing them on a host community that's trying to protect itself from the pandemic. So, right now you're not giving them a voice, right? You're saying, all right, we're allowing the students to study abroad, but you're not letting the host community say, hey, no, we're trying to protect ourselves, and you're talking about a super spreader. Well, I don't know about super spreader event, but you're not helping matters. And so what that tells me now, these things I've seen with the field, we have a long ways to go to really address this. And as Melissa said, decolonize the way we approach study abroad and the way we develop it and the way we think about it. At least from my end, it's helping me just continue that journey, how it can do things better. But until we can send students abroad, I think this is good. Just having these conversations right now, I think, as Joan said, the last 4 years here in this country just were rough. They're hard to deal with. And so if we can maintain these type of communications and conversations, I think it's a very good thing. So that's it for me. I don't know who, I don't know if anyone else has any contact, but okay, I just saw your message, Melissa. Great. Okay, sure. We'll definitely keep in touch. Majo, any other? Oh, actually, I do have one more question. Sorry to take up so much of your time.
No.
But I'm
no
thinking
problem.
like what Abroadia is thinking about doing for like making a donation. Let's say we want a donation that goes to a public school for, let's say, electricity. How much? I'm just trying to get an idea. What would be a good figure for that? For electricity or lights in a schoolroom? How do you, off the top of your head, do you know how much that would cost? If not, that's okay. I'm just trying to get an idea. Okay.
No, I don't have like costs, but so for you to have an idea, I mean, life here compared to the US is way cheaper.
Yeah, of course.
Salaries are not so good for many people, but so I don't know, let's say this year, for example, we supported families in the programs with food, with like
Okay.
food baskets, because even though if it was for a month or a little bit less, it was still something they didn't have to worry about for a month, right?
Right.
During COVID, especially. And we supported mentors and teachers with internet for their like data for their
Okay, yeah.
phone, because we were doing stuff online. So I didn't want them to choose between getting connected or getting groceries. Like that's not how this work should be.
No, of course.
And so, for example, a data for your phone for a whole year, for a whole month, I mean, is about $13. And the food, like the basic basket, we kind of like did, I mean, I did it based on prices and basic like staple foods that people could get, but it varied because people bought locally. We didn't send it from the capital city, but it was around $43, $44 for a family of 5. For let's say 2 weeks, so maybe $30, I mean 80 something dollars for a whole month.
Okay.
So that you have an idea, like it's, and like I said, it's basic staple foods like sugar, corn, you know, beans and oil and stuff like that. But if you are, I mean, I can ask.
Yeah, just ask, certainly. I mean, we'll be in touch, and I'm hoping to make it to Guatemala one day and see for myself. And but like I said, for me, the big thing is we want more people to know about Cuba and Latin America. It's not just Mexico, it's not just Argentina or Brazil. So any way we can help promote Guatemala, we're happy to do it.
Yeah, I'll send, I mean, not from work, from other stuff I'm doing and with people I'm organized with. We're trying to support families that suffer during the storms right now.
Right, of course.
Because they lost, I mean, they lost their homes and the schools and all, but they lost like everything, like the corn they had for the whole year and to sell, and many of the crops were lost as well. So honestly, everything helps.
Well, we will do our part, and please, Joan, Kathy, Melissa, spread the word about Girl Rising Guatemala, and let's see what we can do. It's a good question.
I do. I mean, I'm organized with different collectives, and we're giving support like directly to people. So when it's local, like in the city, we're giving, you know, like clothing but honestly, we're giving more like cash to the local community so that they can buy locally the corn and the beans. That is what their major ask is. So if you're interested in exploring that, let me know. I would, you know, what we're doing is what we collect, we put it in the, you know, in the same like pot, and then we give it to different organizations or families, and we send out photos of the corn, for example, as a like kind of like sharing what we're doing, but we're trying not to share photos of the families, for example.
No, of course.
To be super respectful, especially because right now they're going through a lot of pain. So if you're interested, write me an email and I can give you more information. But honestly, everything helps. I mean, $100 here can do a lot.
Okay. All right, great. That's good to know.
Thank you all for your time, for being here, and
Thank
for
you,
the work
Majo.
that you keep on doing in education.
Thank you very much, Majo, for your time. I really appreciate it. And we'll work again together, I'm sure. We'll have another session down the road.
You have my email.
Yeah.
Tom, thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
Thank you.
Nice to
Stay
see you all.
well.
All right, bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.